Okay, so for today, research and business, while research is not commonly thought of in the field of business, there are still a plethora of good resources and projects here ongoing at the University of Florida. To highlight some of them, you can visit the Warrington College of Business Faculty and Research website, linked here, and this will also go out in the notes document. Here you can search directory for faculty currently conducting research in the business school, as along with recent publications. And then also there's a great statistics here listed, and also amazing news stories that you can see about ongoing research currently happening in the Warrington College of Business. And you can scroll through and see ongoing faculty news. And it's just a really great hub for information if you're interested in joining research and business. Some other good opportunities and resources are the UF Center for Undergraduate Research website. Here you can go to Getting Started to see peer advising hours, and also the online Zoom link to join peer advising to ask them about research and business. And then also you could go to Finding a Mentor here and search for ongoing research that might be going on in the business school by going down to the bottom here. And then the last great resource is the peer advising hours happening in 202 Newell Hall. And their hours are posted on the CURE website, and there should be an advisor there during those time periods. It is first come, first serve. So just keep that in mind when trying to join peer advising. And then our guest speaker today will be Dr. Liang-Fei Qiu. He is a PricewaterhouseCoopers Associate Professor and a University Term Professor at the Warrington College of Business. His research has appeared in a plethora of premier academic journals and been featured in leading media outlets. He is ranked first in the world for the number of publications in the top 3 informed system journals from 2017 to 2021, and was ranked second in the world for a number of publications in the top 2 information system journals from 2017 to 2021. He is also the author of the book, Social Media Analytics, Practical Applications, The Change to the Competition Landscape. So without further ado, I'll let him take over, and we are honored to have him present his personal experience and insight on research and business.
Thank you very much for that very nice introduction. So let me share my screen. So I'm very happy to present my research here. And my research is about social attention. But before I talk about my research, I want to briefly talk about how I got interested in causal inference in business research. So as you all know, a lot of people are talking about AI and big data. They are amazing. We are talking about ChatGPT and a lot of things about AI. So I can give some very nice examples. For example, previously machines were capable of doing this, distinguishing muffins from puppies. If you look at those pictures, it's even a very difficult job for humans, right? If we look at those, which pictures are about muffins, which are about puppies. But right now we have new algorithms of machine learning and image recognition. So machines, they are doing a better job than humans. But the thing is that many people, they worry that big data or AI, they can make big mistakes. The reason is that AI and big data, they rely on the underlying approach, the correlation approach. They are looking at correlation instead of causality. You may heard that correlation does not imply causality. Most of my research, I look at how to dig deeper, how to look at causal inference problems in business research. The reason is that in our business world, the world is very complicated. How can we look at the underlying problem, the data generating process? How can we identify the underlying causation? That is a pretty difficult job. Let me give an example. Actually, machines right now, it is very difficult for them to understand the true underlying data generating process or the causality. For example, if we think about machine learning chess programs in 1980s, at that time, computer science experts, they were developing a very nice chess programs. Those chess programs, they learn from grandmaster games. And the computer science experts thought that those chess programs will be pretty good. But in the practice, those chess programs, they lost in a few moves. They sacrificed their queens very soon. Why is that? So if we look at those chess programs, and we find that they learn from grandmasters games. And when a grandmaster sacrifices the queen, it is always a brilliant move. It will lead to success in a few kind of moves. But machines, they learn it in an incorrect way. And what they learn is that giving up the queen was the key to success. Of course, here, machines misunderstood the underlying data generating process. Correlation does not imply causation. Another very interesting application of machine learning programs is to identify different pictures. For example, here we have a lot of dark pictures. So machines, they look at all those dark pictures, they learn the features of those pictures, and then they will be able to identify which picture is a dark picture. But many machine learning programs, they do not understand the underlying causation. For example, if you give them a lot of dark pictures, so most of the dark pictures, the green grass is associated with darks. So if you look at those pictures, we will see that the darks will always be associated with kind of green grass. And if you give the machine program a new picture, for example, a dog with green grass, he will say, yes, it is a dog. But if you give him a dog on the sand or a dog on the water, he will say that, no, it is not a dog. The reason is that machine, they did not really understand the underlying data generating process. So basically, he will misunderstood the association instead of the causation. So the thing is that we need to dig deeper into our data, and we want to find some clever way to discuss, to identify the underlying causation. That's kind of one important research stream of my applications. If we look at AI and big data, some people, they are getting tired of hearing big data. The reason is actually like this. Too many people, they are focusing on correlation, but correlation in many cases, they are less important than the underlying causation. If we do not understand the underlying causation, we may make a lot of mistakes, just like the examples I mentioned earlier in this slide. We will make a lot of mistakes. So why we want to understand the underlying data generating process? That is very important. Let me give some very, very simple examples to illustrate the basic idea. In reality, in our data set, we have a lot of selection biases. We have to deal with those selection biases. Therefore, after that, we can kind of identify the underlying causation. Suppose that we want to know how healthy is the institution of marriage. So we may try to look at different search engines. For example, we can look at a Facebook search query, and we will see a very happy picture. If we just type "my husband is," we can see that my best friend, my life, awesome, right? All the good words. So it seems that it's pretty healthy, and we have a very rosy picture. But if we look at it just using Google search engine, you can try it by yourself. So it is not so rosy, right? If we look at "my husband is," so it is not so rosy in Google. So what is the difference? Why? We know that there is a selection bias. When people, they are using social media, they are using Facebook, they tend to post the good sides of their lives. But when people, they tend to Google, basically they are looking for help. So there is a very important selection bias in this case. So we know that we can look at the data from different perspectives, and we get a data. We need to ask a very simple question. Is there a selection bias in your data, and how can we address this issue? And another very important example is selection bias and AI. So we know that AI can make big mistakes. Let me give a very interesting example. So in 2016, there was a very famous computer science paper. The working paper is titled Automated Inference on Criminality Using Face Images. So this paper looks very, very interesting. The basic conclusion is that if you give the algorithm, the computer algorithm, the pictures, human pictures, and the computer algorithm will predict whether this person will be or is a criminal. So it's like a science fiction movies, right? We can predict a criminal just by looking at the pictures, the human faces. We do not even need other information. But what's wrong with it? Let's look at the data and let's look at this very important paper. So actually this approach is not new. It has a very long history. If we look at 1876, an old book called The Criminal Man, they are discussing this approach. Basically, they are looking at human faces, the features of human faces. They want to detect some clues that are associated with criminality. But this approach soon disappeared because they do not have any empirical evidence. Empirical evidence did not support this kind of approach. And in this computer science paper, their argument is that maybe this approach works, but human eyes, they cannot detect nuanced features of human faces. If we look at a computer algorithm, maybe they can discover some underlying nuanced features associated with criminality. That's kind of the motivation of this 2016 paper. So if we look at this paper, there is a selection bias. You will see later, very soon. So if we look at the data, they are using about 1,800 photos of different people, and they have two groups. One group is about criminals, and the other group is about non-criminals. For non-criminals, they are getting the pictures from job-based social networking sites. You can think about it as LinkedIn. So if you think about your LinkedIn photos, you typically select the best photos, your best smile photos as your LinkedIn photos, right? And if we look at another group, criminal photos, they are looking at criminal photos, and those photos are taken from their official photo IDs. If we think about those two samples, they are not comparable at all. If you think about your LinkedIn photos, as I mentioned earlier, you have very big smiles in your LinkedIn photo. But if you think about your official photo ID, typically you cannot choose those photos, and you are less likely to smile in your official ID photo. And if we look at the conclusion of this paper, it confirms our conjecture. So basically, the conclusion is that criminals, they tend to have smaller angles theta, and they have a higher curvature rho. So if you think about it, if you smile, then your theta angle will become bigger, right? And if you smile, your rho, the curvature, will become flat. So in this sense, this is not a criminal kind of detection algorithm. It is a smiling detection algorithm. It is not that criminals, they have smaller angle theta. It is that people who do not smile, they have smaller angle theta. The reason is that there is a selection bias in the sample, in their samples. If we look at a treated sample and a control sample, they are very different. Besides criminals and non-criminals, there's a very important feature, smiling and not smiling. People tend to smile a lot in their LinkedIn photos. People are less likely to smile in their official ID photos. So the conclusion of this paper is actually pretty dangerous. They are not looking at it is not a criminality detector. They invented a kind of smiling detector. Of course, this is still useful, but we have to interpret our results very carefully. Otherwise, we may make a very big mistake. When I talk about all those, the selection bias and the correlation does not imply causation. So we want to know how can we kind of identify the underlying causation or causality behind the data. One approach is that we may do a field experiment. So what is a field experiment? So basically, in a field experiment, it is very close. It is very similar to a medical trial. So how do you know a medicine is effective? This is a causal question. We want to know why, and we want to know if this medicine is effective. Typically, we do a medical trial. So we have two groups, control group and treatment group. In our control group patients, they do not take medicine. And in our treatment group patients, they will take medicine. After some while, we will compare the difference between control group and treatment group. If the difference is pretty significant, then we know that our medicine is effective. The key is that here we need a randomization. Patients are randomly selected into our control group and treatment group. That will ensure that our control group patients and our treatment group patients, they are very similar. The only difference is that in the control group, they do not take the medicine, and in the treatment group, they take the medicine. That is the only difference. Then we know that whether the medicine is effective by looking at this randomized experiment. And similarly, in the business field, we can also use this field experiment approach. We want to examine the impact of X on Y. So how do we examine it? We can use a controlled experiment or a randomized experiment. So we can randomly select our participants into two different groups. So one is control group. They did not receive the treatment, and the other is the treatment group. They received the treatment X. And after that, we can compare the performance between those two groups. That will help us identify the underlying causation, and we can avoid the selection bias. The reason is that those participants, they will be randomly selected into control group and treatment group. So they look very similar. There will be no selection bias in this context. So today I will be very happy to talk about this paper, Social Attention as a Reference Point. We want to use a randomized field experiment to understand the underlying causation. So the study context is that we are looking at social trading. What is social trading? Essentially, social trading is a combination of social media and financial trading. People are trading on a financial platform, and they can follow each other just like on Twitter. They can observe trading behaviors of their peers. You can think about it as a Twitter version of financial trading. Basically, traders, they are trading online, and they can also follow other traders. They can observe other traders' trading strategies, trading activities. The market size of social trading is growing, and eToro is the leading social trading platform. In those social trading platform, on those trading platforms, we know that, as I mentioned earlier, social trading has a distinguishing feature that is social attention. You can follow other people. That is, you can think about it as Twitter. So you have the number of followers. We want to look at the impact of social attention measured by the number of followers on people's trading performance and trading behavior. Basically, if a lot of people, they follow a focal trader, will it affect the focal trader's trading performance and the trading behavior? So that is our research question. If we look at our first research question, we want to look at the impact of social attention on traders' trading performance. So if we think about it, if a lot of people follow this focal trader, how does it affect the focal trader's trading performance? There could be two possibilities. Actually, one possibility is the positive social image effect. It means that increased social attention or increased social interactions may motivate users to spend more time and effort Therefore, the performance might be increased. For example, a lot of people, they are following me. So I want to make more careful. I want to spend more time and effort into trading. I want to show them I have very good trading performance. So that is the underlying basic logic of this positive social image effect. But on the other hand, the impact could be negative because actually some prior studies, they look at traders, they find that social attention, if a lot of people, a lot of followers follow those focal traders, it may make those traders more confident and they might be more excited about their investment. It means that they might be trading more frequently and more aggressively, especially in the financial trading context. Many behavioral economics and finance literature, they are showing that even if you are paying more attention to trading, you spend more time and effort into trading, it may lead to worse outcome, not a better outcome. The reason is that you are trading more aggressively, more frequently. Typically, it will lead to more worse outcomes, worse trading performance. So if we think about both directions, actually both directions are plausible, as I mentioned earlier. It could be like the positive social image effect. It could be the negative overconfidence effect, which presents a very nice opportunity for empirical testing. So that's why data is very important. We want to use data to test which way is dominates. Actually, we conduct a field experiment in a leading social trading platform. It is a cryptocurrency trading platform. And we show that a negative overconfidence effect dominates. It means that increased social attention, if I have a lot of traders, they are following me, more traders, they are following me, if my social attention increased, then I will trade more aggressively, more frequently, and it will lead to worse trading performance. Now let's look at our second research question. But before we talk about our second research question, once again, we know that actually here identifying causal impact of social attention is very challenging. As I mentioned earlier, correlation does not imply causation. If we directly use some data analysis tools, for example, like regression, typically what we got is just correlation. We are not able to get the underlying causation. The reason is that social attention is endogenous, or being followed is endogenous. It is not an exogenous variation. For example, if we look at a trader, he has a lot of followers. It must have a reason. For example, this guy, he may have very good trading ability or trading skills, or he may have some insider information. He may have excellent previous trading performance which attracts a lot of followers, right? It must have a reason. So people with a higher level of social attention could be systematically different from people with a low level of social attention. In this case, if you just run a regression, your dependent variable is your trading performance and your independent variable is the number of followers, you will not get the causation. The reason is that there are a lot of confounding factors. As I mentioned earlier, they have different trading ability, trading skills. They may have different insider information. All those are confounders, unobserved confounders. It is very difficult to identify the underlying causation without controlling for those confounders. If you look at two people, one person with a higher level of social attention, the other person with a lower level of social attention, but there might be other differences between those two people. For example, they have different trading abilities, they have different trading skills, they have different information. Therefore, it is very hard to attribute the difference in trading performance to their social attention. It might be attributed to other reasons, other unobserved reasons, like trading skills, right? So here we want to identify the causal impact of social attention. So we want to isolate, we want to control for all other things. We want to isolate the impact, the causal impact of social attention. One way to do it is to conduct a field experiment. Actually, we can exogenously add and remove followers in a very natural way. I will talk more about it in the experimental settings. So here we conduct a field experiment and we want to identify the causal impact by exogenously adding or removing followers. So after that, we look at our second research question. We want to ask why. We want to dig deeper into the underlying mechanism. Basically, how does social attention affect the trading behavior? And as I mentioned earlier, there are two possibilities. One possibility is that social attention may make people make more careful decisions. But on the other hand, some people argue that social attention may make people more excited about trading, so they are trading more frequently and aggressively. And in our study, we find that traders who receive social attention, more social attention, they are trading more aggressively. They open more positions and they are using higher leverage ratio, which is consistent with the overconfidence story. And finally, we are looking at the third research question. This research question is pretty interesting in the sense that we are asking, are the effects of increased social attention reversible with the removal of social attention? So it means that whether the loss of attention is a reversed process of increased social attention. If the loss of attention is just a reverse process of increased social attention, then we do not need to investigate the loss of attention. The only thing we need to investigate is the increased social attention. And what would happen if we have the loss of attention? We just add a negative sign in front of our original result. But we find that it may not be reversible in our context. And it will have very different implications. If the result is reversible, it means that the loss of social attention may curb traders' overconfidence. As we mentioned earlier, if increased social attention can increase overconfidence, and if this process is reversible, then we will conjecture that loss of social attention may curb traders' overconfidence, right? But if it is not reversible, we may even find that the loss of social attention may induce more radical and more aggressive trading because the traders, they may want to win back the lost followers. It's kind of related to the reference point or the prospect theory in behavioral finance theory. Actually, Tversky and Kahneman, he won Nobel Prize because of his findings in the reference point in the prospect theory domain. This theory simply says that there is a kink in individuals' utility curve, and people place heavier weight on losses than gains. It means that if people they are losing social attention, when social attention falls below their original reference point, they are more motivated to trade aggressively because they want to win back their followers. They want to trade more aggressively and more frequently. They want to win back their followers. So if we look at our research context, so this is the screenshots of the trading information of the platform. For each individual, for each trader, we know their trading activities, we know their trading profile. So we know a lot of detailed information about each trader. And in addition, each trader can observe the number of following and the number of followers. It's just like Twitter. You can think about it as a Twitter version of financial trading. And now let's go to looking at a field experiment. So for this platform, first we randomly select 6,000 investors. They are active users. They are active in trading. And after that, we randomly select those for the control group. So we did nothing. Okay, so for the control group, the idea is we did nothing. It's like a medical clinical trial. For control group, typically people receive nothing or they will receive some placebo vitamins. So for the control group, they receive nothing. And for the treatment group, we make a lot of artificial accounts. So they look real. You can think about them as like a fake Twitter accounts. We basically create those accounts. They look very real. And then we can gradually add or remove followers for those traders. For example, for the first group, treatment A group, in the first stage, so the first 3 weeks, we call it the first stage, we add 10 followers per week for people, for traders in this group. And in the second stage, we will remove 10 followers per week. So the data pattern is like this. We first increase, then we decrease. And in our second group, treatment B, we add 10 followers per week in the first group, and then we keep adding 10 followers per week in the second stage. So this is the pattern. And in our third group, treatment C, we add 10 followers per week, then we did nothing. So that will be our pattern. So remember that here, the followers, they are added or removed exogenously, so that it will allow us to identify the underlying causation. The reason is that all those traders, they are partitioned into different groups in a very random way. So the traders in those groups, they should be very similar in terms of their financial trading abilities, skills, and information. The only difference is that they receive different treatment. In our context, different treatments, meaning that some of them, they have like increased followers, some of them, they have decreased followers, some of them, they have nothing, no increase, no decrease. So after we have done the randomization, we want to confirm that our randomization is successful. So we look at all those traders' information, the number of followers, the total asset, the previous trading performance, all those characteristics, all those variables. We want to make sure that different groups, they are very similar. So if we compare those groups, we find that there were no significant differences among those groups. So the only difference is the treatment. And in other characteristics of traders, they are very similar. For example, if we look at their previous trading performance, they are very similar. It is not the case that in one group we have excellent trading performance, excellent investors. In another group, we have worse performance traders. It is not the case. So basically, our kind of characteristics or our variable are very balanced. All the groups are very similar. The only difference is this treatment. That is how we can identify the causation. We can attribute the difference in trading performance to this treatment. That is the causal identification. So after we have done the randomization, then we can use simple regression to discover the underlying causation because we have the randomized experiment. So in the first research question, as I mentioned, we want to quantify the impact of increased social attention on trading performance. So our regression is very simple. If you have studied the simple regression model, that is the simplest simple regression model we have experienced. So our dependent variable is the performance of the traders in the first stage. Basically, we have two measures, but the results are pretty robust for the performance. We have return rate in dollars or return rate in Bitcoins because this trading platform, they are trading coins, different coins. So we can translate their return rate into their Bitcoin or their dollar return rate. And our independent variable is a dummy variable, a binary variable. If this participant, if this trader is in our treatment group, the value is 1, otherwise the value is 0. If we look at our experimental design, we know that in our first research question, we just focus on this first stage. And we can see that our first 3 groups, they are treatment group because traders, they have an increased attention treatment, right? And the last group, the control group is our control group with nothing. So if traders, they are in one of the first 3 groups, the value will be 1. Otherwise, the value will be 0. That is our independent variable. And we find that, so we are interested in this beta 1. So it is positive or negative. If we look at our regression result, we find that beta 1 is negative and statistically significant. It means that increased social attention will lead to worse trading performance, and it will translate to about a 9% decrease in the return rate. Basically, if traders, they are in the treatment group, if they have a lot of traders following them, if they have increased social attention, then their trading performance will become worse. And it is about a 9% decrease in their return rate. In other words, if we have a lot of people following them, increased social attention may make them trade more aggressively, more frequently, which will lead to a worse trading performance. And our second result, we are looking at the impact of increased social attention on trading behaviors. So we have the same regression equation. We just replace the dependent variable with the other two one. One is our, the dependent variable is the number of positions. The other one is the leverage ratio. We want to use them to characterize the user's trading behavior. If we look at their trading behavior, we find that increased social attention, actually, they causes traders to open more positions, and they are using higher leverage ratio. If we look at this coefficient, we find that these coefficients, they are positive and statistically significant. It means that if increased social attention increases, it will lead traders to open more positions, and they are using higher leverage ratio. In other words, they are trading more frequently and more aggressively, which is consistent with our previous overconfidence theory. And finally, if we look at our third research question, so here we want to look at both social attention increase and social attention decrease. We need to look at the second stage of our experiment. If we go back to our experimental design, if we focus on the second stage, the treatment in the last 3 weeks, so we know that our control group is our group 3 and group 4 because we did nothing. And for treatment A, we have decreased treatment, right? Decreased social attention in the first group. And we have increased social attention in the second group, in treatment B. So here we have if we look at this regression equation, that is not difficult at all. So here, our dependent variable still, that is the kind of the performance in the second stage. It is the return rate in the second stage. And we have 2 independent variables. They are pretty important. So if the trader is in the decreased treatment group, the value is 1, otherwise the value is 0. Remember that the decreased treatment is our first group, treatment A group. So if traders, they are in this group in the second stage, then the value is 1, otherwise the value is 0. That is our decreased treatment dummy variable. And we also have an increased treatment dummy variable that corresponds to our treatment B, because here we have increased treatment. If traders, they are in this group, the value is 1, otherwise the value is 0. So we want to quantify the impact of increased treatment and the impact of decreased treatment by looking at beta 1 and beta 2. We are focusing on beta 1 and beta 2. So let's look at our experimental results for this regression. So for this table 9, let's look at the first column, return rate, and the second row. The second row is the coefficient in front of the increased treatment. And this confirms our previous result. It means that increased social attention will reduce trading performance, will lead to a worse trading performance, because here the coefficient is negative and statistically significant. It will lead to a 13% decrease in return rate. And at the same time, we know that people are trading more frequently and more aggressively because those coefficients for positions, for leverage ratio, they are positive. People are trading more aggressively. This confirms our previous result. But more importantly, let's look at the first column, the first row. The first row, that is a decreased treatment. It means that social attention is not reversible. If it is reversible, this coefficient, the first column, the first row, the first column, this coefficient, negative 0.182, this should be positive if it is reversible, but this is negative and significant. It means that the impact is not reversible. If you have decreased social attention, it will lead to even worse trading performance. The reason is that, as we explained earlier, that is about your reference point. When your social attention falls below the reference point, you are desperate to return to the original level. So you are trading even more aggressively and more frequently to return to the original, to win back the original followers. That's why your trading performance is even worse. So that is a pretty interesting result, meaning that if we increase social attention, your trading performance will be worse. But if we decrease social attention, it is not reversible. Your trading performance will be even worse. So this is a basic result of this study. And let me conclude this paper, and I can make some concluding remarks. And after that, you can ask me some questions. So basically here we are conducting a field experiment on a leading social trading platform. And this trading platform is a cryptocurrency trading platform. They are trading a lot of coins. Besides the Bitcoins, they are trading a lot of different coins. And we want to examine the impact of social attention on trading performance and trading behaviors. As I mentioned earlier, we have two important kind of interesting results. The first result is that increased social attention may make a worse trading performance. The reason is that it will make people more excited about trading. They will trade more frequently and more aggressively, and it leads to kind of worse trading performance. Actually, this is consistent with some prior empirical literature, like in behavioral finance literature. They are saying that you do not want to look at your trading portfolio every day, every hour. If you trade too frequently, you will have a worse trading performance. You may just put it there and you look at it maybe every week or even every month. You will get a better trading performance. You just leave your trading portfolio. You do not want to do too many activities. So that is actually consistent with our result. And our second interesting point is that the loss of social attention is not a reverse process of increased social attention. It means that if you first increase social attention, they will get worse trading performance. But if you remove followers, they will get even kind of worse trading performance. So even if you know what would happen if social attention increases, it does not mean you automatically know what would happen if social attention decreases. That's why we need to study both sides, right? If we look at some of the previous academic literature or industry report, there are things that if we know what would happen if social attention increases, we will automatically know what would happen if social attention decreases. So the logic is that we can simply add a negative sign in front of our result. But our paper actually shows that that is pretty different. It is not a reverse process. You have to look at it in a very careful way. You have to study both sides because of kind of the reference point, because the underlying psychology of traders, they have a reference point. So increased attention and decreased attention, they are two different processes. They are not reversible. Okay, so that is my talk. So any questions, I'd be very happy to answer any questions. It can be about, this talk can be about general business research. So any questions are welcome.
I can also sometimes it's like feel free to type them in the chat, and then also I can provide your email if that might be a more comfortable way for people to ask you questions in this document too.
Yeah, you can also email me about your questions.
Okay. Thank you so much for your amazing presentation. I enjoyed learning all about it. And I actually had some questions for you.
Right.
So how do you see like this kind of report and this kind of research playing into like industry with finance and trading? Like, do you see it being used actively as like a guide point?
Yes, so actually we are collaborating with the social trading platforms. So kind of it has a pretty important managerial implications because right now we know that social attention may affect people's trading performance and trading behavior. Actually, it may negatively affect people's trading behavior and trading performance. So when platforms, they kind of design social functions, they should be very careful about it, right? It's like introducing some social functions from like those platforms. They are at first when they introduce those functions, they are just thinking about it is a Twitter version of financial trading. We can have followers, people can follow other people, other traders. It may increase some kind of interactions of users, but sometimes it may have some side effect. That is the managerial implication of our research.
Perfect. And then also, what got you interested in kind of like studying finance from like a research perspective rather than like, I don't know what your undergraduate degree was in, but like, did you like always know that you wanted to kind of do research in business, or is it something like you kind of got more interested in later on?
Yes, so actually we are doing a more broad category of researches other than finance. So we are looking at a lot of different things. For example, one of our research, we are looking at the impact of sharing economy, the impact of Uber entry on public transportation. Because we know that Uber entered different places and the people may find it is more convenient to use Uber rather than using public transportation. It may affect public transportation. There is a huge debate, kind of a policy debate around those things. And we have data and we can empirically, we can causally identify those issues and we can provide some interesting policy insights. So basically, our research kind of stream is that we want to look at those very interesting questions with important managerial or policy insights. We want to identify the underlying causation. It could be many different aspects. We are looking at like a sharing economy, social media. So this kind of research. And today, the topic I presented kind of belong to like social media plus finance, but we also look at some other interesting topics and with kind of important policy implications.
Perfect. Thank you so much for coming out today and presenting your research. I loved learning about kind of like, especially the idea of like how it's not reversible and you studied both ends. I thought it was a very novel way to approach one, research in business, but also just research in general, making sure to look at both sides of every kind of project.
Thank you so much. One thing I want to say is that we are now in the age of data. We have a lot of data. So it allows us to do many interesting business research by looking at the underlying data generating process. So I encourage all of you to look at the interesting questions with important managerial and also policy insights.